Today, we are going to talk about paint palettes. Now, I was sitting in my studio the other day, and it occurred to me that I have so many different paint palettes, and they're all for different mediums and different uses, and sometimes it just depends on my mood. So I thought this would be a cool thing to talk about and to give you basically like a paint palette tour of the paint palettes that I like to use for different mediums when I'm painting and making art. If you're a beginner artist, it can be a little bit overwhelming when you are sitting down to paint and you're like, oh, I need a surface to put my wet paints on. And there are a lot of things you can do. I started out, as like a kid and a teenager, basically finding any surface that I could make work. So sometimes that was just like a paper plate. Often it was a paper plate if we had one. The paint palettes I have here, I have a broad range of costs. So less expensive to more expensive. Paint palettes that are washable, and then paint palettes that are disposable and that you have to actually like replace parts of. So we're going to talk about that here. We're going to actually go by paint medium. So the first thing we're going to start with is a watercolor palette. This is the watercolor palette that I have. Now, I actually haven't used this in many years. So this was a palette that I bought for a watercolor class in college. I actually went to open it up a little bit ago and the plastic was cracking. So this paint palette is probably almost 19 years old. So it's pretty old. But you can take the lid off. Okay, this paint palette is really nice because you can decide the layout of where you want to put the paint. So you're going to have your little paint tubes and they're liquid, and you're going to place the wet paint into each of the little wells. And then after that, you can go ahead and paint. You've got these nice little areas in the middle where you can mix your paints and wet them down and go from there. So this is really convenient because you can just pull the palette anytime and you're ready to go. You just got to re-wet it. One thing though, it does have a lid, and there's a nice place here that you can store like paintbrushes and stuff like that. But I learned the hard way that you don't tip this when it's full of like wet paint and water. It's obviously not sealed, but I just didn't think about it. So I had like a canvas bag that I stuck this in, and I was walking across campus and I had just thrown it in the bag after watercolor class. And I got home and I had like wet brown paint all over my hip and the bag. And obviously it just leaked right out all over. So don't make that mistake. If you have a wet palette, just don't turn it over, even if it has a lid. So the next three palettes are actually going to, they work with gouache and watercolor. Oh, by the way, the palette I just showed you that I had for watercolors, it does work for gouache. So with gouache, it's very similar to watercolors. You can re-wet them just like watercolors, but they're more opaque. And I love gouache personally for things like for illustrating and other fun little projects, especially if I'm painting little motifs for wallpapers or fabrics or patterns. I really love gouache because it's super creamy. So if you like a creamy type of paint that's also real wet like watercolors, if you haven't tried gouache, give it a try. It's really fun. But so these next few palettes I'm going to show you, I use mainly for gouache, but like I said, they can be used for watercolors as well. So this first one, it's a metal kind of tray that has like I don't know, what do you call that? Ceramic coating on it, maybe? I like the size of it. And so I will just put my gouache onto here, and it just gives me a nice area to mix, and the water doesn't beat up on it. And so it's really pleasant to use. It's nice. The only thing I don't love about this one, and maybe not all of them have this issue, but the tray kind of like bows up a little bit in the middle. And maybe that's nice if you're looking for something so that the water doesn't all pool up in one area. But it does make it a little interesting. If your paint is extra watery, it's going to kind of run off into the sides. So I don't know if they're all like that. I think Sabina Fenn is the one who recommended this paint palette. I watched her YouTube video where she talked about art supplies, and this was one that she used. And so I purchased it, and yeah, I enjoy it. I like using it a lot. The next palette I use for gouache is this one here. So this was just kind of pretty and fun. I got this off of Temu. I think it's Temu. I think that's how they pronounce it during the Super Bowl commercials, which kind of threw me off because I've been calling it Temu for over a year. But this is nice because it has it's a lot like the first watercolor palette where it has separate little wells for colors, and then a bigger one here for mixing. So this actually still has the color remains from, wallpaper collection I was painting and working on that's that's going to Loomwell wallpaper. The collection I was painting for was kind of a provincial vintage vibe, and it had oranges and things like that, and so hence the color palette here. But I enjoy this one. It did come broken in the mail. I don't know if you can see that. So, but it still works. But Temu did reimburse me, so that was nice. I think you can find these on Amazon too. I've seen them there. I'm not sure if they're available now, but this one's a fun one. Now the next one that I'm going to show you is actually a set of 3. So I don't know if you've seen a lot of like watercolor artists or painters or even pattern designers will have like a pretty ceramic plate that like white with speckles on it. And I just was like, that looks fun. That just looks nice to paint on and to mix colors on. And so I went looking for one on Amazon and I found this little set. So it's actually a set of 3 little plates. And I love these because they're so organic. They're like handmade and they're all kind of different shapes. And there's 3 different sizes. So we've got the medium size, the small I just showed you, and the larger size. The brand is Roro. So anyway, these are on Amazon and they're just a nice option to use if you want to have like different plates to be able to move around and mix paint with and things like that. I should probably talk about prices real quick. I can't remember exactly. This first paint palette, I don't know, it was like almost 20 years ago and prices for everything has gone way up. So you're gonna have to look up that one. This little paint palette I got for probably like $8 from Temu. And this set of 3 was maybe around $15 on Amazon. And this one I also ordered from Amazon, and this was probably, I think, around $10 to $15. Okay, so moving on to the acrylic paint palettes that I use. This is a disposable paint palette. This paint palette, I was actually, it's got colors all over it because I'm still working with this palette. If I'm still working on a collection, but my paint palette is full and just too goopy and messy, and I want to start off with a clean palette, I'll actually rip this one off, but I won't throw it away. I'll keep it and set it aside so that I can refer back to this to look at the colors that I mix so that I can pull from those colors. Sometimes it's just fun to look at the paint palettes too. So this will end up in the trash, but I'm going to keep it until I'm done with this paint collection. As you can see, I've torn off the page that was dirty, and I have a bunch of new pages here. So I think I ordered this one from Amazon too, and it's just one of your normal. I'm gonna look up what kind of brand that was. Let's see, Amazon. Okay, so I think this was the Strathmore palette paper pad. It was like $7. So it comes with 40 sheets, and I highly recommend this, especially if you're someone who struggles to clean your paint palette and you just want to be able to just paint and go, then give this a try. Okay, the next one is a newer addition to my paint palette collection, and it's called the Sta-wet Handy Palette. And this is really awesome. A friend of mine actually referred me to this palette, and it's cool because you can open it up. So what this is it's a paint palette that keeps your acrylic paints wet, and it might actually work for like if you're working with gouache or watercolors too. But what you have here is like, it's like a paper that you put on the top of a damp sponge. So you put this down right there, and you put your paint on, and it's a special paper that you can use a palette knife on, and you can keep your wet paints in here up to like a week or 2. I'm not sure what the recommendation says on the package, but for me, that's how long I waited between like paint sessions and using it. It did start to get a little goopy and dry on like the top layers, and I felt like the paint wasn't as smooth as before because some of the paint was a little wetter from absorbing. But one of the ways you can help that is to make sure you don't put too much water in the sponge underneath. So I'll put paints here, I'll use this paint palette, and then I'll close it up when I'm done and set it aside. And another one of the benefits is you can come back to that same exact paint. You're not having to worry about remixing and trying to achieve the same exact colors that you were before if you're working on a painting over multiple sessions. So that one is worth a try. Again, this one is a little more because you have to replenish the papers. It does come with a little pack of extra sheets that you put on top of the sponge. But eventually I'll have to buy more of those once these ones have been used up. So not a good option if you don't want to have to keep spending money, but it is a good option if you are fine with that and if you like the idea of not having to throw out your acrylic paints at the end of every paint session. Now we're going to move over to oil paints. And now these probably also work for acrylics as well, but I don't like to put acrylics on palettes that are not disposable or hard to clean because I do tend to let my acrylic paints dry out on the palette. So with this one is a really good handmade option. So this is made out of glass. This is made by taking 2 panes of glass and we spray painted in between the panes with white paint because I like having a white base sometimes for painting with, for mixing my paint colors. Sometimes artists like to choose gray. I've done that before, or a neutral brown, but I chose white this time, and then I literally just duct taped the edges of it together. So this is nice because it's pretty big. I've seen bigger ones that artists make. I've also used, before I made this, when I first discovered how nice it was to mix oil paints on glass, which it is really nice, by the way. If you haven't done it, I recommend trying it. If you don't have something like this or extra panes of glass laying around, you can even just use an empty frame, an empty picture frame. So get a picture frame, pull out whatever picture that's in it, and then you can put a brown piece of construction paper, or you can paint the back of the glass, whatever you want. But it works really well for a paint palette. So a good handmade or homemade option if you've got glass and duct tape lying around. Now this final one I'm very excited about, and I'm actually going to show you an unboxing video because I did record that, and so we're going to watch that right now. Okay, I just got a package in the mail today and I'm really excited, so I'm going to do a little unboxing with you and you can enjoy the new thing that I got with me. My ring light just broke. Well, Timmy rigged the light so it's hanging on the chair. We're gonna open this box, and as you can see, my toddler has gotten to the box already before me and has drawn all kinds of beautiful little works of art. Oh my goodness. Expressionist Confidant Studio Palette. This looks way nice. So basically, hold it like this. It's actually really comfortable. It's got this nice ergonomic shape. Rests here in the crook of your arm. And then this is where the thumb hole is. It's kind of smoothed out here. Comes out a little bit so that it's comfortable for the thumb. It's got a natural stain on it. I saw some palettes that looked really nice, but it had more of an orangey stain, reddish orangish, and I wanted something that had more of a natural tone to it. It is so nice. Now, as you can see, it's really clean because I haven't had a chance to use it yet. I just got this a week or 2 ago. I've actually not used a wood palette like this before. Actually, I did many, many years ago, and I didn't know what I was doing, and I just let my oils dry on, and I had all these globs of oils, and I was like, oh, I'm just gonna throw it away. So I did. I hadn't learned at that point how to take care of a wood paint palette. But, so this is gonna be really nice because I'm just gonna place all of my oil paints out here. There's plenty of room for mixing, and this is gonna be really nice for painting portraits and landscapes. By the way, the cost for the Sta-wet palette was about $13 to $15 depending on what kind of sales or discounts Amazon has. The price for this New Wave palette was $55 on Amazon. It's a little bit more of an investment, but it was definitely something worth purchasing for me at this point. This is going to be so nice because I'm going to be able to be mobile, move around, and I'll always have my paints with me rather than on a paint palette stuck on a table. So I can stand at my easel like this one back here, and if you want a tour of my art studio, go ahead and watch this video right here.